Okay, so I don't necessarily want to beat a dead horse with some of like the topics that I'm choosing to make videos on and stuff like that. But sometimes there are issues and topics that are just so affecting society and people of all walks of life that they really need to continually be discussed. Continually, I think I just said continually. Anyway, um, so I just wanted to present like some questions more so about the Pulse shooting because I'm from Orlando and I know someone who is a survivor, but also other recent mass shootings as well. And I definitely know that I'm not the only one who has been pondering them a lot lately, if for no other reason than the fact that they've been happening much more often than in recent years. There are a lot of YouTubers out there speaking about this, not just the most recent one, which in the past one recently happened, it seemed like people would be sad, they'd be affected, they'd be shook up, they'd, try to be supporting the community that was affected by the shooting the most, wherever the city the shooting took place. And then after like a couple of days, it was done, not really mentioned so much more in the mainstream media until something else happens. And I think people more and more are starting to realize that not only are these mass shootings horrific, but that there is starting to be a trend, something very, very strange about them. There are things that connect most of them, not all of them. And there are some occurrences and oddities that is happening with many of them that a lot of people are either flat out ignoring or just a little too oblivious to see because they're probably still so in shock, so deeply hurt, and wondering about their own safety. These mass shootings cause our entire country to have some sort of like a post-traumatic stress disorder syndrome. It affects us. It's almost like a little mini 9/11 happening all over again for a couple of days at least. You have those thoughts in your head like, am I going to be safe here? Is my kid going to be safe going to school? Am I going to be safe traveling on a plane? Am I going to be safe, in a well-known area like Disney World, or if we go to, an arena or something, a concert? And it's just gotten really, really bad. And I am not the type of conspiracy theorist that says everything terrible and wrong that happens is a setup and it's a plot and a ploy by the government, and citizens can't be held accountable for their actions. That is not my stance at all. I definitely believe that, for example, the Columbine shooting, I definitely believe that unfortunately that was authentic. I'm not sure much about the parents, but the boys themselves, you saw footage. You saw, security tape. You saw images of children running out. There's images, unfortunately, horribly gruesome, but they're there. Some people choose to watch for teaching and learning purposes. You see that it definitely was those two boys who did that, who committed that horrible crime. And it's not like I woke up this morning saying, hey, I want to talk more about mass shootings today. No, I think I'm with a lot of other Americans and people in general all over the world who are just like, wait a minute. I'm sick of living in fear. Let me look further into this. You just try to learn as much as you can about them, I guess for the hopes of trying to assume like some much, more type of power and control over your life. I think people it's almost like a catch-22, like a train wreck. Like, you want to look away, but maybe you want to see like if there's either any way you can help somebody, or maybe learn information about how, you yourself can not be involved in something like that. Safety precautions you can take, or whatever, things to look out for. So basically, like I said, being from Orlando, I'm much more familiar with the Pulse nightclub shooting. But there are a few things that I noticed about that one. It was kind of, I guess, what some people would call a red pill for me. There are a lot of things that I had questions about, and other people as well. I don't even think just from this, community. I think from all over the world. And it just seemed like there are so many unanswered questions that have gotten answered in other situations. So I do believe there is definitely something up with some of these shootings. For example, one thing that a lot of them have in common is the nightclub or kind of public area shootings. You don't ever see video footage of the alleged shooter in active, mode. You don't see him in the act of committing the crime. Okay? That is one thing. For whatever reason, they'll say, security tapes weren't working or whatever, it happened in an area that wasn't, whatever it is, that is a common thread. Okay? Another one is the fact that a lot of the times the alleged shooter, the supposedly, guilty person, dies by committing suicide or by the law enforcement agencies who come to the scene of the crime. Again, it's like it's just an occurrence, something that has occurred throughout a lot of them. And let's see, another one is that in the schools, many of the school shootings had reportedly been either undergoing a drill at the time the shooting took place, or were preparing for a drill and told that there would be a drill coming up. And I kid you not, I promise you, there is so much evidence out there of this. If you want it, you can message me, I can send it to you, I can send you links, whatever. Most people, this subject is so disturbing to them. I understand why they choose to turn a blind eye and look away. Again, similar to 9/11. But I feel like the more we're aware and less oblivious, perhaps there's more that can be done in the near future to either prevent things like this from happening, or just kind of get down, to the bottom, the nitty gritty of, okay, exactly who is responsible. It's obvious it may be the alleged shooter who's possibly a part of the physical act. But again, there have been so many of these shootings, which is such a horrible sentence in itself, but so many shootings where eyewitnesses and survivors say there was more than one shooting. For whatever reason, the media likes to push this narrative where it was a one lone gunman and he got access to really, really expensive military style weapons that he shouldn't have, and he had emotional problems or mental problems or whatever, and he by himself, usually with no military training, is able to become an excellent marksman, hit just about every one of his targets, carry heavy equipment, load and reload, bullets, all that stuff, all by himself. Even though multiple eyewitnesses say, and many of these shootings, that they saw more than one shooter. Okay, when that is addressed, when people question that, often we're told by the mainstream media or law enforcement or whatever that yes, sometimes people under, stress and distress, their memory is a little, shaken and whatnot, and it's not as reliable and dependable when you're in panic mode, when you're panicking, than when things are going smoothly. So, they'll say yes, sometimes, your mind can play tricks on you during a horrific traumatic event, whatever. But for one, it's not like this is a couple of people, it's many people. I feel like we're not being able to gauge the exact amount because of the limited interviews that are done with people who are survivors. I personally feel like there are some who are selected to be interviewed. When they are, 9 times out of 10, it's recorded. It is not live. And I feel that some people who possibly were actual survivors, especially with Pulse, are either chosen not to be interviewed, or the interview is always recorded. It won't be live either. And if it is, they definitely keep it to a minimum. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like a recording where they can kind of, cut or just say, oh, you said something we didn't really want to get out yet, whatever, we're going to commercial, or, oh, sorry, we're having technical difficulties. And a live interview, it's just going to be out there. They can try to edit it later or whatever, go back and say this or that, but it's out there in the universe. People can watch and judge for themselves. Okay. So, again, it's just really, really odd about that. I'm not really going to delve too deep into the arena of crisis actors. That's a completely whole nother video in itself. You can feel free to research that. YouTube is excellent for sources on that. Again, this isn't necessarily stuff you wake up in the morning wanting to talk about or research or do whatever, but it's just gotten to the point where it's like people are fed up. They've had enough. They've gone from kind of just being in fear and shaken up to just being kind of like, you know what? Okay, how can I get control of my life back and help be a contributing citizen to society that is so overcome with fear for the most part, like a lot. There have been many books that have said that, the average child today, this year, in this time frame, has many more worries and anxiety, like twice as much anxiety as children from the 1950s. And I can source that as well. It's, it's getting crazy. But I mean, like I touched on a little bit in my other video, I knew someone who survived. When he was interviewed, like I said, he was distraught. He was shooken up. He like, I think it was like almost a week later when he had his interview, okay? And he was still so shaken up. Like, sometimes he would get, like, his voice, his vibrato was very weak. It would be shaky. Like, his eyes would water. Like, he would recall specific things. And he, again, was just so shaken up, even though he wasn't physically attacked. Whereas, on the other hand, you have people who were injured, allegedly, supposedly, who the very next day were being interviewed by the media. And the day after that, in a press conference. Okay, a press conference, okay? And these are people who had been injured, not like necessarily life-threatening, possibly fatal injuries, but injured enough where they would have required some sort of surgery and a significant period of recovery time. Okay, these people who were chosen, who all had been supposedly wounded, at this press conference, they are sitting up, they are composed, they are, just very well spoken, articulate, alert, not much grimacing or seeming physical discomfort, again, just observations. I'm not accusing anybody outright or saying something for certain is the case, because there's likely no way to know until even more research is done, just research that hasn't been done yet with these people. But other aspects, there has been research done. So like I said, with these people, 2 or 3 days later, they're talking to multiple press outlets, giving interviews for news stations and newspapers and magazines. And, they just been wounded, just had major surgery, but the next day you're up to talking to press and whatnot. How many people do you know who have been severely injured and not only want to see a whole bunch of family members or friends, but complete strangers and be put on live national TV? How about the families grieving right now will issue a statement later? Or, normally the person may be a little out of it. They may need, assistance breathing. They may be on heavy pain medication, which usually people are after major surgeries. There was no rarely even any emotion in the face or the eyes, but there was no grogginess from possible pain medication, heavy painkillers, having to be taken from not only the pain from the injury, but pain sustained by the invasive surgery as well. Okay, these people are speaking in complete sentences, they're laughing, they're joking, they're smiling, they're composing poems, which, don't get me wrong, I write as well, and I know sometimes a very strong situation can trigger you or whatever, inspire you, however you want to say it, and give you, a source to want to write as an outlet. But I don't know. It's like if you break your ankle, are you necessarily the next day going to write a poem? Maybe. Okay, that I can't. But again, as far as medication's concerned, how much sleep and rest you need, it's just something to ponder again. And I really think the press conference was really just weird. I can go into that later, but you had doctors talking about wearing the same scrubs with blood on them or shoes with blood on them for a week after as a remembrance of the survivors and those who died. And, the blood reminds them of, the sacrifice, bloodshed, life loss, and he's paying homage. First of all, anybody in the medical community will tell you that is downright almost against the law as far as sanitary purposes, and the possibility of transferring of diseases, bloodborne pathogens, etc. You can't walk into a place that's supposed to be sterile with shoes that you're saying are bloody. So that's just outrageous. But again, these people, they're at a press conference and laughing and joking and smiling, whereas people that I've seen that were interviewed just for a brief amount of time, either right after it happened or a couple of days later, still distraught, very shaken up, definitely not laughing or smiling at all. Okay? Really, just, I don't know, just gets me. And there's quite a few other things. But, I mean, when you're in the hospital the very next day, do you even feel like seeing coworkers and family and friends? No, maybe just your close relatives or best friend, and you definitely wouldn't want to be wheeled into a room with a whole bunch of strangers. I mean, it just think about stuff, but it seems to be happening more and more, and I'll probably even make a few more videos like this on this topic, because There are some people who can just compartmentalize, hear about this stuff, and then be okay. And there's other people who are like, wait a minute, something's terribly wrong here, and we're not getting the whole story. We're not getting the full picture. There's a difference between, okay, for investigation purposes or what have you, we can only release so much information. We're not going to release this or that. But you're saying that about some information and some eyewitnesses' account or whatever. But on the same token, you're saying that you can, go into the killer's house before it's been formally investigated. Like, really? The media just let into these people's houses to rummage through their house, and it's just crazy, man. People who are like saying there are more than one shooter, and so there's like this lone wolf narrative. We're supposed to be afraid of, that lone wolf that just kind of goes against the grain and this kind of going ballistic, literally, no pun intended. And those people who say that, their memory is unfortunately affected by the trauma and the stress. If they say people were blocking the exits or whatnot, oh no, that's not right, they got confused. There were people in the bathroom trying to hold the door so the killer couldn't come in, but definitely not so they would be blocked and not be able to go out. Definitely that wasn't the case at all. So the people who say something different than what the official narrative is, oh, their memory has been affected, you can't really trust their memory, right? Which I understand, that can happen a little bit, but not usually with multiple people with the same account. Whereas the people who are saying whatever the narrative is, oh, their memory is 100%. Their memory is fine, completely accurate, flawless. And then you'll get the official story, and it's like usually from a person who wasn't even there. Who knows who told it to them, and they'll just go. It's like, who's to say what story that you decide to go with? I just feel like the one that is the narrative that's been mostly the narrative for these shootings is the one they go with. Lone wolf shooter. Yeah, it's too much. And I think more and more people are catching on to the fact that something's awry, something's going on more than what we're being told. The fact that the shootings only get covered so much for a certain amount of time, and then when people have questions after the fact, days, weeks, months later, it's like the media is not really reporting on it. They're usually on to something else. They rarely go back and say, well, this update or that update. And it's gotten to the point where even people who aren't like alt media journalists or consider themselves citizen journalists or whatever, or skeptics and conspiracy theorists, just regular bloggers and entertainment bloggers are like, something's going on, like something's up. Like, the chance of one person being in one mass shooting is literally like, I think like 1 in like 12 million or something. I can find the exact number. So the likelihood that there were not one, but multiple people who survived 2 mass shootings, again, like, in theory, sure, it could happen, but the likelihood is like so slim. And don't even get me started on the interviews with some of the people who survived both shootings. I'm not even going to go there, but there definitely is one young man who had a baseball cap on who was smiling his entire interview. Definitely looked like duping delight to me. Like, it's crazy. Very composed. It's just, something's up. Lastly, I'll say from the Pulse shooting, like I said, that was my red pill. Initially kind of got me scratching my head and wondering. And I'm not going to jump to conclusions and say, this is why this is happening. There's a lot of evidence to point to that. But there are a lot of different beliefs on that. And I won't go there here. I'm not trying to be like politically divisive or anything. But you can easily YouTube, not Google, because Google is heavily censored. You might find some stuff, but it's mostly on alternative journalists' websites, alternative media, independent blogs, and YouTube channels, etc. You can just find where there's video footage of, for example, there's a young man supposedly injured in the Pulse shooting. He has a red hat, I believe, red shirt, and red sneakers. Honest to God, there's footage of him being carried by two friends. He has his arms around both their shoulders, and he's hopping on one foot as if his foot has been injured. And somebody else had to be filming with their own camera phone or whatever, because this footage, unlike the footage that is shown in the mainstream media, it keeps going after he's in the main focus. You can see literally him putting his foot down. All three of those people look around. I don't know if they're looking around to see, okay, thumbs up, you did it, you're good, you're done, or, oh, oops, was I not supposed to put my foot down? They walk around, and then all three of them start walking. Crazy. Yes, even the young man who had the red shirt on and red sneakers. Okay, so you can do your own research. There's tons of intriguingly disturbing evidence out there about especially the Vegas shooting, because I believe that was the one with, unfortunately, the most fatalities. And there are ballistics experts out there who are giving accounts, who have military training, okay, of the sound of the guns. Yes, I said guns plural, because they're saying it's no way that this could only be one gun that we're hearing. And they analyze this stuff through and through. You'll hear the sound recording, all of that. Again, many eyewitnesses say that they saw more than one shooter on the ground. But when that first happened and you were hearing that, of course, they came back, edited later, whatever, mainstream was like, oh, you know what? Those people were mistaken. They all were mistaken. Lastly, you can just look into with that eyewitness accounts of people who were on the same floor as the alleged shooter, what they saw. Other witnesses seeing that there was a shooter from a different window. There's also footage out there. And yes, footage can be edited and doctored, but when you have multiple footage from different people all showing the same thing, it's something to look into, okay? Lastly, I just want to point out with that shooting, unfortunately, probably some of the most devastating news. There were a group of survivors. I believe there was at least about 4 of them. They wanted to come together and just bring into account to either the media, law enforcement, or just get the word out, or whatever, that they had so many unanswered questions. They wanted to come together. I don't know if they were planning a documentary or a book, or just trying to be interviewed together, whatever. But again, unfortunately, all of those survivors that were involved in that group mysteriously died. Again, information is out there. You can get it for yourself. You can fact check that. If you need links or whatever, want them, I definitely can send them to you. And that is just some disturbing ass shit. Excuse my French, but if you never put on a tinfoil hat before or felt your tinfoil hat tingling, that is definitely something to make it do that. So again, I just want to reiterate, I'm not one of those people that says everything is a hoax. I know, unfortunately, there are instances where this stuff legitimately happens. And there are times where, of course, there are really people injured, and killed. Sacrificial lambs, and this is no disrespect to their friends and family at all whatsoever. If anything, we owe it to them to get these unanswered questions answered and find the truth. for them. Some people say, oh, conspiracy theorists that say no one died or whatever, so disrespectful to the family. How can you make a mockery of the situation? No, okay? Each person has their own individual beliefs. You can't clump everybody under some simple umbrella of just thinking one way, saying it's associated with a certain political party or, NRA or whatever, okay? I'm probably the most anti-gun person you'll ever meet. Whenever I meet, I see one of my friends has a gun or a family member or whatever, I'm just very squeamish. I hate them. Just the sight of them makes me, cringe. So I'm not some NRA lifelong card-toting member, but also it definitely seems like something's awry. People are like, how did such and such get into this club past security with all this gear, heavy bullets, heavy coat? And again, no footage of this stuff, okay? Something's always up with the security footage, that or it shows like minimal. You definitely can't identify the shooter. So, yeah, this is probably a topic I may talk about more again in the future. And I hope with all my heart that we can start really, really investigating this stuff to get the truth. Whether it hurts or not, we are owed the truth, simply put. And so are the family members of the victims and survivors.